inspired by A Love Supreme and other works. Urban Bush Women Walking with Train, Friday, March 3rd, wesleyan.edu/CFA.
You're listening to 88.1 FM WESU Middletown, a community service of Wesleyan University. Up next is The Business Buzz with Jeff Sherman, taking a look at innovative and cool technology and businesses right here in Connecticut. Catch The Business Buzz each and every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. as part of our Monday through Friday 4 p.m. local talk block, only on 88.1 FM WESU Middletown.
The Business Buzz on WESU is proudly sponsored in part by Carlson and Demir, located right here in downtown Middletown. Carlson and Demir providing legal representation for victims of serious injury and for those facing criminal charges. On the web at carlsondemir.com, 860-819-1034.
Thank you, everybody. So great to be with you. Thank you. Great to be back at CPAC. It's a place I have really, I love this place. Love you people. So thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Matt Schlapp and his very, very incredible wife and boss, Mercedes, who have been fantastic friends and supporters, and so great when I watch them on television defending me, nobody has a chance. So I want to thank Matt and Mercedes. And when Matt called and asked, I said, absolutely, I'll be there with you. I mean, the real reason I said it, I didn't want him to go against me, because that one you can't beat. So I said absolutely, and it really is an honor to be here. I wouldn't miss a chance to talk to my friends. These are my friends. And we'll see you again next year and the year after that. Donald Trump did not get a standing ovation. They leave out the part, they never sat down. They leave that out. So I just want to thank. But you know, my first major speech was at CPAC, and probably 5 or 6 years ago. First major political speech. And you were there. And I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the commotion. And then they did these polls where I went through the roof, and I wasn't even running, right? So you won, and the people proved them totally wrong.
There you go. So we welcome to the Business Buzz. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman. We have Marty Keena and Chris Calandra in Studio B. And, you know, Chris, it's always fun to needle your friends. Someone asked Marty, how are you dealing with 4 years of this?
Right.
Are you psyched, Marty?
Oh, my God, no.
What aren't you psyched about?
Probably hearing him and I, you and I, every Friday.
Well, I actually look forward to that, but what I do look forward to is...
What do you not look forward to?
Well, I do not look forward to I perceive to be instability, you know, in a leadership core. And the fact that the political person is involved with national security issues is troublesome to me. I don't want to sound like I'm mimicking something but I'm concerned about that. The fact that a guy that has that much power, and Steve Bannon, he was marched out here at CPAC and he said, "Oh, thanks for finally inviting me." So he's been an outsider even in that group.
Correct.
So
that is true.
It does tend to brighter light on him as somebody that I'm very troubled about.
Are you troubled, Chris? Well, let's play a little Steve Bannon.
Sir Katie, it's the same team that, you know, every day was grinding away on the campaign, the same team that did the transition. And if you remember, you know, the campaign was the most chaotic, you know, by the media's description, most chaotic, most disorganized, most unprofessional, had no earthly idea what they were doing. And then you saw them all crying and weeping that night on the 8th.
Chris, does Steve Bannon, who's probably is pretty much running things. Does that bother you?
It doesn't bother me at all.
I wonder if it bothers our listeners. 860-685-7700. 860-685-7700. What do you think, Chris, is really at the heart of the liberal agitation over this whole Trump presidency? What do you think is the crux of the whole matter?
I think losing hurts anybody that's very competitive and is passionate for one side, whether you're in the arena or as a fan or as a supporter. It really hurts to lose, and I think some of it's dealing with a loss. And when it's an unexpected, inexplicable loss, it's even that much more painful. I think that's part of it. And also, I think, and Marty, maybe you could share your thought, I think part of it is that they don't respect Donald Trump. They feel like they were beaten by somebody who shouldn't have won, didn't deserve to even be in the game, and I think there is a little bit of elitist in it also.
Let me ask you.
I would say there's a tinge of that.
How about this? Could it also be that maybe what was tried and true for 3 decades, identity politics and everything, just basically exploded?
That's true, and he had a platform before, so it wasn't as though he was unknown, and his positions on things started to emerge, but in a lot of ways we still don't know his position on a lot of concerns, and he's the president.
Sure.
Okay, but doesn't it really point to the fact that the Hillary Clinton campaign was bankrupt of any real forward-thinking ideas?
Well, be that as it may, now we are where we are.
But isn't that the truth?
Well, sure, we can revisit old news, but let's focus.
So is that the point of what they really heard about? Is that they lost because their agenda and what they thought?
They realized that they thought that they had something that they didn't, and then they paid the price for taking it for granted. Mm-hmm. And then when they go back and look at it, they realize that their message has lost touch to much of what the base that they thought they had, and much of the coalition that they thought that they had was a little bit more independent thinking than they thought they had.
What do you think, Chris, is the actual Democratic Party's base at this point?
I think the base is not just left of center like it has been in the past, like under Bill Clinton, but I think it's moved farther to the left. Some would say the Republicans have moved farther to the left or to the right, but I think clearly the leadership in the Democratic Party and the force that's really driving the agenda within the Democratic Party is very left-wing oriented.
Is that a prescription for a national party?
I don't think so, and I think that the numbers bear that out over the last 8 years under President Obama's administration, from the presidency down to local, state elections. The Democrats have gotten their heads handed to them. So far, the results don't lie.
Complacency.
Let's see what our caller has to say. Caller, are you there? Caller? We lost our caller.
Oh,
Unbelievable.
boy.
Let's see what we can do here. Yeah, we lost our caller. That's unfortunate.
Give us another shout.
Give us another shot, yes.
860-685-7700.
Oh,
calling
it's
ourselves.
We'll just call them back.
There you go.
What do you think, Jeff, in terms of what's the driving force in a Democratic Party? What's their central
if you want my honest opinion, I think that they're a party that is seriously adrift. I think, and actually
fractured.
Adrift. I think that there's a real possibility that they may become so marginalized by their own actions that there may be a time in the wilderness before they come out as a real party.
They may be a victim of the marginalization of everybody, the way the administration is, questioning their validity and putting doubt in people's minds about everything. And the disclaimers, that would just be another victim of our whole society. Actually.
Sure.
Let's just see what our caller has to say. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
You know something? You made my day because I thought I was having technical problems, but you just hung up on me. You won't be the first one.
Well, I thought you forgot about me.
No, I'd never forget about you. What's going on?
Well, I'm just really concerned about this Steve Bannon. I think he has way too much power. He's an outlier.
Actually, there's many that say he is really the person. Trump's the figurehead. He's actually running the show. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's terrible.
I think it's
Saturday Night Live skit.
I think it's actually true.
Yeah, I do too. But I think he's not only the political advisor, but he's also he's part of the National Security Council.
That's right.
Exactly.
Marty was saying.
That's wrong.
And he says they say that to be part of the National Security Council, you have to be impartial. I mean, this is totally going against what's been done in the past. I think it's too much.
You know that remember what Karl Rove was Bush's brain?
Yeah.
I believe that Bannon is Trump's brain. I think that he never would have won the presidency if it wasn't for Bannon. And I think Bannon, Previs is kind of window dressing. I think Bannon's the guy calling the shots. What do you think of that?
Well, the thing with Karl Rove is that he was never involved in policy.
No,
he was more.
He was a strategist, but he influenced decisions. But Bannon, more than any other, is really
he's the whole thing. He's in policy. He's in
so what
strategy.
What about him that he says or what he stands for? What about him that concerns you? That's the real issue.
Oh, he's a white supremacist.
How do you know
and
that?
he's a nationalist. He was editor of Breitbart.
Let's talk about one thing first. Okay, nationalist. What's wrong with being a nationalist?
Well,
like in other words, having a thing that America
really,
is a country. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with putting our interests first, but he goes beyond that. He's almost he's an economic nationalist. We live in a global economy.
And actually, you pointed to something that could be one of Trump's Achilles' heels if he actually engages in a protectionist policy that could actually bite him in the calf, I believe.
Yes,
so
and also, I don't think that they're well versed in economics. I really don't think that they know what they're doing.
Well, Obama wasn't exactly an economic genius either. I mean,
but he was willing to delegate it to other people who were. Whereas I don't think
delegate things for someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and that's not good either. I mean, the record of Obama was an impressive. I do agree with you. Protectionism and strident nationalism might not be the best thing for an economic policy. So I agree with that. The white supremacist thing, I'm not sure about. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't know enough about it.
Well, he was the editor of Breitbart News. I mean, that's a white supremacist website.
Don't know about that, but that's fair enough. So, are you fearful going into the future with Trump?
Yes, I am terrified.
How about your friends? Are they also scared?
Yes.
And what scares them most?
The instability. It's like we have juveniles in the White House. The instability and the total disregard and disrespect for the whole office. They don't respect government.
Okay.
Even Bannon said he's there to deconstruct it.
So
this is our democracy.
So you're the friends, you and your friends that are obviously very concerned. What are you going to do about it?
I've been calling my senator and my representatives every day, and I would like to go to demonstrations, but we're a blue state.
Okay. So, now, do you think Trump should be or will be impeached, or would you be for that?
I think that there's more. I think he'll be impeached because I think that there is definitely I think there is something going on with Russia, and I think they're all involved. I think even Jeff Sessions is involved.
Well,
there's something, and I think that Bannon has something over Trump.
Well, you have some very interesting points, and I would have to say that, one thing I always say to kind of make you maybe feel better is that, something, when you really look at it, and I know it's maybe disconcerting for you, but a lot of times, a lot of people, I do the same thing. You think about, well, this person's going to do this, but really, you're 99% in control of your life. I mean, Trump, will he impact it? Maybe, could be, but doesn't it kind of make you feel better that you're really kind of in control of your own life?
I don't feel like I'm in control of my life because I think that he is so unstable, and the people that he's surrounding himself with, they're amateurs and they're impulsive and they're reactionaries. Look at Stephen Miller. I mean, where did he come from?
Don't know.
He's a 31-year-old Duke. What has he done? Now he has all this power. And he has already said when he was interviewed by a couple of weeks ago, George, I can't think of his last name.
Stephanopoulos.
Yeah, that basically Trump was above the law, or that the presidency is above the other two branches.
Well, you have some very interesting and obviously some you some red hot emotions on this. Chris has a question for you in Studio B, and I take no responsibility for this question. Zero.
We appreciate you calling in, and you and I probably wouldn't disagree with much. But let me ask you this: it's been curious if you follow the stock market since President Trump's election.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, can I just finish? Wait.
All right. Go ahead.
I mean, it's just so all the listeners are on the same page. Inexplicably, the market has been red hot since Donald Trump's election and has had significant gains since then. But yet we hear a lot about the chaos in the White House, and they don't know what they're doing, and there's amateurs. Can you just, as somebody who's very worried about Donald Trump, how do you square the action in the stock market with that?
Well, I think that this is always a reaction with the stock market when a new president comes in. And another thing is that, that's great that the stock market is doing great, but it really only benefits the 1%. I'm not feeling anything from it.
Okay, but if I could add to that, I think the people that he's appointed to some of the positions in the financial area in Washington are all Wall Street people.
Okay,
that
is a ridiculous argument because all that's trumped up. Sorry, what's fair is fair. What do you think? Obama had Billy Bob from Pathway Supermarket.
All right, what about all the deregulation? That's what they're betting on. They're going to bet all these energy stocks are going up because the deregulation towards carbon emissions is going to be let go. And these people go crazy.
We have to start looking at the big picture. I mean, maybe the deregulation is, stimulating the stock market, but the deregulation is going to lead to more pollution.
Impact the environment, absolutely.
We will have to see what happens here, but I definitely appreciate your call. I wouldn't worry too much. The weekend's going to be it's going to rain around 7.
Well, the sunsets will be better with all the pollution in it.
It should be a enjoyable weekend. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Awesome.
Appreciate the call. Thank you. So it really boils down to, Chris, as Marty is saying, that the Democrats and liberals, by the way, 860, you can jump on the line, 860-685-7700, 860-685-7700. Liberalism in general likes wedge issues. It seems like a huge wedge issue that's getting exponentially bigger is in the environment. Comment on that.
Well, I think a couple of things, like with what Marty said, is it's not just that energy stocks have gone up because there's going to be more pollution. Almost all sectors have done really, really well with the expectation that we're going to get more economic growth, more sensible regulation, and tax reform. And
can I just interject one thing? Because I just hear me out for 1 second. Is it not that maybe because of what happened, 860-685-7700, that losing the election, no matter what happens, there always has to be a dark cloud? Is that not what's going on?
Yeah, no, that is true. But, the caller, and again, very respectful, appreciate her calling and listening. The idea that stocks going up only help the 1% doesn't hold water in my mind, because those corporations, like small companies, have gone up tremendously since the election. Most Americans work for small companies. If those companies are doing better, that are seeing their revenue go up, that's good for jobs. That's good for everyday Main Street Americans. It's not just for the 1%.
Let's throw it out to Marty, and let's throw it out to our listeners, 860-685-7700. Aside from the environmental issues, having a good economy, is that a bad thing, Marty?
No, it's not a bad thing. But at the same time, it should be done in a meaningful way that it doesn't harm and deregulate to the point where.
But can you have an economy that's overregulated, Marty?
Absolutely.
Okay, so could that maybe be the case, or from a democratic perspective?
No, because when you look at the executive orders that immediately start to benefit those in the coal industry and areas that we were trying to put a cap on things, which we have determined in real science that it does have an impact in the environment. And you know what? Maybe it's a good thing we just found those new 7 planets that are only about 40 trillion miles away, because we're going to need it here pretty soon if we don't start to look, as the caller said, a bigger picture so that we can all at least survive in a growing economy.
So is it, let's call it, throw out to our listeners, is it, as Marty says, 860-685-7700. Are we really up against Armageddon? In other words, it's really a choice between...
Well, not tomorrow.
It's a choice between economic growth and Armageddon, because that seems to be the argument. So I'd like to throw it to our callers, 860-685-7700. And is that really a situation where that all regulation is really beneficial? and any kind of peel back would be detrimental. And then the one question, Marty, I have for you is, did that not really explode in the Democratic Party's face that when they were talking about global warming and all these other environmental issues, the guy and the gal that are barely hanging on to their job saying these people don't know what they're talking about because they're not talking about my issues?
Well, that's true. They're not talking about the economic issues of the table in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But the people sitting at the table in the kitchen who have grandchildren have a thought in their heart that they'd like to have their grandchildren have a world that they can live in.
Yeah,
so it's not like they have to sacrifice their own existence for that to happen. But I think they need to be sensitive to the fact that there is a concern even for people who need a job.
That's true. But before we get to the caller, Jeff, this notion that any peel back in regulations means pollution in Armageddon is going to be, without a doubt, a loser for the Democratic Party. The EPA came into existence in 1970. I think it's real life smart to say, hey, are there any regulations that don't make any sense anymore, that are not as good as we thought they would be when we imposed them, and to reduce some regulations. It's not any regulation gets reduced automatically means people are going to be polluted and drink arsenic water.
Let's see what our caller has to say about that. Caller, are you there?
Hey, yes,
Yes, go ahead. What's up?
So, Mr. Trump himself, have you listened to the man speak?
Yes, I do.
His speech patterns, come on.
But he's not the one calling the shots. It's Steve Bannon that's really calling the shots.
No.
The man just doesn't know how to speak.
Okay, but he's not. He might know how to speak, but it's Bannon that's telling him what to say.
I think we lost him.
I think we lost him. We did not hang up on them, by the way.
860.
It sounded like his cell phone dropped.
860-685-7700. 860-685-7700. We'll take that next caller or the other caller that from some reason got dropped, and we'll take any other caller what's joined the conversation. The real topic is, are you scared that as the Trump presidency gets more traction, that some of the things that Marty is talking about, in other words, global warming, environmental Armageddon, the peeling back of regulations, or having a political spokesperson and strategist in charge of strategic issues and global issues, do these things really bother you and do they concern you? Or are there others in our audience that are looking forward to the next 4 years, if you will? So I'd like to hear from all you. 860-685-7700. Now, Marty, what happens if and when the Democratic National Committee appoints Keith Ellison as their spokesperson? Is that not another nail in the coffin?
Well, if they do that...
Well, they will. It's going to happen.
Well, I'm sure there's other candidates
well,
that
there's
are
no
working...
candidates, but they're not going to win. He's going to win.
But no, I think Tom Perez is likely to win. You don't think so?
Ellison is at this point,
Yeah.
the odds-on favorite.
Joe Biden, I think, is going to...
But he's
No.
not really in the race. So Keith Ellison, let's say a black nationalist, actually, the wanted a black separatist, who is basically in very close collaboration with the Muslim Brotherhood. Is that not really what the Democratic Party needs even more of?
Well, you don't need that, and I think
But that's what you're going for. I mean,
well, you're asking me for my opinion. I'm not in the Democratic committee.
I know
I
that.
think it's wrong, personally, and I think it's indicative of what we were saying earlier in terms of the increased polarization that's taking place.
is it going to hurt Bernie Sanders more since he was the big proponent of Ellison?
I don't know who gets blamed for what anymore.
Right.
There's so much stuff in the air that there's so many balls. I can't believe it. You're going to need the Carbonaro effect to keep it all.
Oh, by the way, did you see that yesterday?
No, I did not.
I love that show. I've watched it. I didn't see yesterday's.
Did you see the one when he's bleeding to death and the girl's freaking out? I love that. 860-685-7700. We'll be talking about anything you'd like, but it's in particular, are you fearful of the Trump administration? And in particular, what are you fearful of? 860-685-7700. Now, Chris, do you think there's an unwarranted fear out there? And if so, what's behind it?
I think there is a little bit too much hysterics around Donald Trump and his administration. And I could see people that don't think the way that I do, that might have different thoughts, and folks that didn't vote for him may not be pleased with the direction. But some of the hysterics about, that he's going to poison people, that he's going to become a dictator. Some of the hysterics, is way over the top and really is not going to change hearts and minds, which is what you need to have happen if you want to defeat him 4 years from now.
There's too much of the hysteria on both sides.
Yeah.
So the whole moderation that we were looking for, even through Obama, when people wouldn't cross the aisle, now people aren't even going to the aisle.
There you go. Let's see what our caller has to say. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. So you've been listening to the show. What say you? I'd love your opinion. Are you fearful?
I'm a little fearful, but I would just have to say, when Obama was in, the stock market was already hitting record highs.
When Obama was in, say again. No, actually, didn't it tank when he was in? Not because of him, because of the economic collapse. Like when Bush left office, wasn't the stock market collapsing at that point?
When Bush left office, the stock market was way down.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
When Obama came in, the stock market at the end, the stock market kept going from 17 to 16 to 18. It kept going every week. It was doing a record high. It's just
and what do you attribute that to?
I'm not really sure, but they're giving Donald Trump a lot of praises.
So you think Obama didn't get the credit he deserves?
I mean, he got some credit, but I'm just saying it's just a trend that's continuing. I don't think Donald Trump really should get the praise because it was a trend that was already picking up. It was going from 16 to 17
I
to
got
18.
you. Now, in terms of the discussion, you said you're a little bit. What are you most fearful of in terms of the Trump administration? Do you think there's good reason to be fearful, or do you think it's hard?
I'm really fearful because, like, from past presidents, he's just not really up there with the rest. And I hear you guys saying that Steve Bannon is the one that's calling the shots. That's like so fake because everybody's voting for Donald Trump, and then there's a guy behind him. So Donald Trump is like a puppet. So we have a puppet president.
Does that scare you that you have a puppet president?
Because you really want a president that really knows the business.
You're looking for a leader.
I've never been to a puppet show. Have you?
Yes, I have.
No, but I've seen a lot on TV, and it's like if Donald Trump is the guy up front and the guy got his hand in his back and is moving his lips and talking for him. And that's what you guys are saying, and it's not. It seems like you guys are not really worried about that.
Oh no, I think Marty's worried. I'm just trying to figure out if should I be worried?
Yeah, I mean, don't you want a guy up front that if he goes on TV or if he's talking to someone, he could really come over like a president. He doesn't really have to say something today, and then tomorrow he comes back and says, "Oh, I made a mistake yesterday," like Ronald Reagan or John Kennedy or even Obama.
Chris, do you think that Trump makes too many mistakes? The caller thinks he does. Do you think that's true?
Yeah,
we're going to throw out to Chris for a second. Hold on.
I think he does, and he probably has and will make more mistakes, but it's a double-edged sword because he's also very genuine. He gets out there and talks off the cuff. He's not really managed. He's not really structured. He doesn't give a lot of pre-prepared speeches or presentations, and he's very accessible, including on social media. So I think, Jeff, he probably does make more mistakes, but he puts himself out there in a way that we may have never seen before, at least in modern times.
That is true. And now, caller, final question, unless Marty has something, that how do you think this whole thing unfolds, like going 2, 3, 4 years in? How do you think this whole thing plays out?
Wow, that's a good question.
That's why they pay me the big money.
Right, it's a good question. It's like no one really knows. It's like right now you just have to just sit back and just watch it. You can't really put a bet on it. You don't know what's going to happen. It's like so up in the air right now. But what I'm saying is like back in the whenever a president comes in, you really want to feel comfortable that you have a guy that he's there. Like Ronald Reagan, he's there. If he talks to you and he knows what's going on, you could kind of depend on him. But you feel comfortable having a guy like Donald Trump that you just don't really know what he's going to say, what he's going to do. I thought the president, the job of president was something you could be proud of. Like say, okay, we have Ronald Reagan, so you go to sleep at night.
But okay, Ronald Reagan was conservative, so you don't. It's not about him being conservative. You're just scared about the man.
Right, just the man himself. It's not really about Democrat or Republican. You just want a guy that knows the position, like Bill Belichick. He knows the position, so you don't really worry about his team. He knows how to get his team to the top, how to win.
Fantastic.
You don't want to get a guy like Barry Switzer.
Gotcha. Yeah, Barry Switzer. That was a bad call.
I have a question because you seem to be an observer of the market trend. You know, what number are you looking at? You know, as far as a point where you're going, "Wow, this is getting out of control," and you're feeling good about what your investments are doing. Where do you think this is going? It's probably close to 21 now, Chris.
Yeah, it's almost at 21.
Yeah, I think the caller's really not in the stock market per se. But any final thoughts, caller?
Yeah,
can you provide comfort for our other callers in terms of why they shouldn't be too fearful? Can how do you deal with the fear?
Well, first of all, let me say, what if the stock market starts going backwards, though? What
could happen? That would be probably the end of maybe a negative aspect of his presidency. But by the way, the jury's still out. I mean, he could easily fail. We don't know, do we?
Right, that's true. I'm just hoping that everybody just looks at everything as country first. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, just country first. If it's good for the country, go ahead and do it. If Trump works out good for the country, I say thumbs up.
Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Chris, do you think that the Democratic Party, in terms of its core ideology, is country first?
I don't believe it's country first, and it doesn't mean that it's country last, but I don't think it's country first, and I think...
Did that hurt them in the election, that they were not, really?
I think it did with a key demographic in the flyover country in the Midwest with blue-collar workers. I think it did make the difference between a Clinton win versus a Trump win. It's not necessarily vast numbers, but it was enough to make the vital difference in the election.
And it was a topic that was hammered
at
that very point, so it was reiterated
and talk to
emphasized.
the flyover states in terms of the people that have lost their jobs due in part to globalization and those kind of trade deals. 860-685-7700, 860-685-7700. So I'll ask, and by the way, callers, the real topic of the day is how do you feel about the Trump presidency? Are you concerned in terms of our go-forward scenario? Are you troubled by the claims that Steve Bannon is really in charge? We'd like to hear from you, 860-685-7700. Now, Chris, and then I'll ask Marty, how do you see this whole presidency unfolding? Do you think that we expand the fracture, or do you think could he be successful and then kind of dampen that? How do you see it going forward?
I think the country will probably continue to be fractured. I do think, though, and it's anecdotal, right? But we heard Marty's comments at the beginning, and then the woman that called, and then the most recent caller. People still underestimate how smart a strategist and how effective Donald Trump is, and they do that at their own peril. If you want to stop Donald Trump, first off, you may want to stop underestimating him. We did it in the GOP nomination process. It was done during the general election process, and even now, you're not hearing people confront him on political debate topics. It's unstable. It's that he's he's in bed with the Russians. It's that he's amateur hour, and my opinion, and I could be wrong, Marty, is that Donald Trump is brilliant. He's often the smartest person in the room, and his strategic instincts are very strong.
Let's see.
And he's been very effective so far, despite the chaos.
Yeah. I would agree. Let's see what our caller has to say. Caller? Oh, caller, are you there? Helps to do it.
Yes, I am.
So what say you?
Unfortunately, my phone cut out. I couldn't hear what you were talking about while I was on hold. But
that's all right.
I wanted to comment on Bannon.
Go ahead.
I think he really is the one pulling the strings.
And what causes you to believe that? Because that's interesting. Go ahead.
Well, when you look at the executive order that put him on the National Security Council, it seems like Trump was actually unaware that he did that.
Mm-hmm. So
to me, that implies that he didn't produce the executive order, and even scarier, he didn't read it before signing it.
So does the point of Steve Bannon in charge, let's say, does that scare you? And does it scare you because he's a nationalist? Is that part of what makes you a little troubled?
Not so much that he's a nationalist. I think he's actually a fascist. I've looked at some of his old speeches going back, and he's always quoting these obscure philosophers from 1920s, 30s, Italy and Germany. He quotes one of Mussolini's top advisors on multiple occasions, which I think is frightening.
I think that's a valid point. Anything else you'd like to add to the conversation?
I think Trump has, his rhetoric. I've never been a fan, but I thought his rhetoric was pretty good.
What do you think of the point that Chris had, that he's actually the smartest guy in the room, that people underestimate him?
Well, I think he's a clever marketer. That's kind of what he's made his living off. I think he's a subpar businessman, but he's very good at marketing.
Do you think, Marty, do you think, to the caller's point, that he's really just a good marketer, maybe lacking a little substance?
Absolutely, because it doesn't offer any substance for us to hold on to. There hasn't been anything in terms of policy in any of these speeches. Most times when you see a president at these big events, they have an initiative that they're bringing forward. They're laying out a vision of the future. And, yesterday we get, hey, I love you guys. Let's go over to the 19th hole.
I would take, because we're not betting, but I would willing to wager a nickel that at the end of the 4 years, you're going to look back and say, holy cow, I can't believe how transformative he was in his presidency, Donald Trump. I think it's happening, and you're not noticing because the chaos and the noise and the turmoil
they create
is. I don't disagree with that, but at the end of the day, the underlying effectiveness of Donald Trump is going to be missed by a lot of people, and at some point, you're going to say and have an aha moment.
I agree with that. Caller, thank you very much for the call.
Awesome. Can I comment one more quick thing?
No, we're good. We got another caller. Thank you very much.
So, and this is not to give you a hard time, Marty. It's just and I think you're right. I think part of Trump's modus operandi is to create chaos, to have disruption, to have things kind of mixed up and clouded, because he uses that to carry out what he wants to have happen. And you could see that, and sometimes that happens in sports, it happens sometimes in business, and he is using it effectively in politics like I've never seen before.
I think that's a good point. Let's see what our caller has to say. Caller, are you there?
And we cut those long-term obligations by $21.5 billion.
Technical snafu.
Oh my God, he's dropping the ball. So, caller, sorry about that. What say you?
Well, I don't agree with one of the comments you just made. Is the country going to be more fractured? We have to remember who started this fracturing was Barack Obama. He gets on the radio in California and tells Latinos that Republicans are the enemies. I mean, who would talk about that like fellow, about other Americans?
Well, I think you have a very good point, my friend, because I think, although the media never picked up on it, I think Obama's rhetoric was highly, well, you look at what happened. I mean, we've never been more divided as a country. So do you think that he's maybe the president that really got the ball rolling on that?
Well, I would hate to say the ball rolling because that sounds intentional.
No,
I don't know. I don't think Barack Obama's intention was to divide the country. But ultimately, that's what he did. He was very divisive. A lot of his comments, the Trayvon Martin incident.
Why wasn't the press picking up on that? What do you think the reason?
Well, I mean, that's a common. That's self-explanatory. The press is very liberal. They were in love with Barack Obama.
Well, let me ask you about that. Do you think the press, in part due to the election and their positions, basically before and even after, do you think their net worth is plummeting, yes or no? And do you think they can recover from it?
Do I think the media's what is plummeting?
Their stock, in other words, their value.
Well, of course. I mean, of course. Americans have, a poll came out about a week ago. People trust what's coming out of the White House more than they do the media. And I think the media is obviously proven to be very biased. They haven't given Donald Trump any leeway. They won't let the guy breathe. They won't let anyone in his administrative
But do you think sometimes they could be over the top in that and maybe crying wolf too much. That's a very interesting point, but I thank you very much for the call. Chris, what do you think?
Caller. No, I think he brings up a good point that President Obama, although he campaigned very, very effectively on the idea of bridging the divide, the partisanship divide, he failed at that. And I would give some criticism to George W. Bush because to me, this fractured country really came out of the post 9/11 world. George W. Bush's election win over Al Gore, which was contested in the courts. So George W. Bush gets failed marks on it, and I think President Obama gets failed marks on it. And this has happened, Jeff, over 16 years where the U.S. hasn't really been on a big winning streak over 16 years.
Oh, it's been a
colossal, very divided.
Colossal losing streak.
A big theme, so
yeah.
He's capturing all the catchphrases.
There you go. Very cynical, Marty. Unbelievable. So, caller, what say you?
Well, a great spirited show.
Thank you.
My comments, you're welcome. My comments are just about as far as Trump and everything else. I think the agenda that he's put forth is one that actually we should all support. I don't know if that's the case. Obviously, that's questionable. But, secure the southern border, stop the illegal immigration, you go rebuild the military.
Can I ask you a question about immigration?
Sure.
What is it about the Democratic, when it shifted, I can't really get the time frame, but when did it happen that, Bill Clinton was for actually building a wall, and now the Democratic Party has transformed and morphed to not just liberal immigration, but essentially no borders? When did that happen, and what do you think the reason behind it is?
I think the reason behind it is more of the globalists, that they want to have open borders throughout the world and so on, and we're the big prize. So I think that's part of it. But, I mean, that's just a guess on my part. I can't say much more than that, Also, there's other components. Big business wants labor. People want a better life, so they come over. You could go on and on about that particular subject on immigration. But the fact is, and I love what Trump says when he says, if we don't secure our border, we don't have a country. And this open borders things, personally, I think it needs to stop.
But, now, in many of the liberal fiefdoms, nationalism is now a dirty word. How did that happen? Do you think it's accurate or good?
Nationalism could be bad, could be good, depends, But in our case, I think we have to get back to nationalism because I think we're losing our mojo as far as that's concerned. I mean, we have people in the country who don't want to stand for the national anthem. They don't want to make a pledge of allegiance. They don't want to, you could go on and on. But you know about all this stuff, So I think nationalism could be good. It could go too far where it becomes a negative. But right now, I think we got to get back to, being proud of America and trying to take care of, as Trump says, America first. I think that's a good thing.
So Steve, we talked about Steve Bannon a little bit at CPAC. He said basically the three initiatives, and this is kind of the core competency of what Donald Trump's administration wants to do, is number one, America first. International global policy should be we put American needs first. I agree with you, caller. That doesn't seem that objectionable to me. Number two, he said we're going to have American nationalism. We're going to protect American industries, protect American jobs, promote industry, promote jobs to build a healthier economy that hopefully will benefit all Americans. I have no objection to that. And then lastly, he said he wants to deconstruct the administrative state. That might make people a little bit more nervous, but lots of Americans believe that the government is involved in too many things, too involved in people's lives. There's too many regulations, and to bring that a little bit under control seems okay to me. I would argue with anyone who would say what's objectionable about that, Jeff.
Marty, what's objectionable to that?
Well, because they're all generalizations. So when you scratch under the surface and you start to look at what are those regulations that you're looking at? How are they deconstructing what was there? What is the impact on actually the humanism in the people that have needed those perhaps in medical care?
Right, but that's not what the media and the Democrats are doing, though.
Right
Marty,
now it's obstructionism.
But they're not saying, hey, listen, we agree that we probably could do a better job on regulations. Let's sit down and figure out what regulations we can get rid of because they're not working or they're harmful. They're not doing that. They're not doing that. They're saying, oh my God, he wants to get rid of regulations. People are going to die in the streets and we're going to be drinking poisoned water and breathing poisoned air.
Caller, last question is, you heard the debate between Marty and Chris. So what do you think? What do you think of Marty's points in terms of that? I guess essentially there's no real need to roll bait.
Well, I wouldn't agree that there's no real need. The fact is that the regulation situation has gone too far in one direction, similar to what we just talked about with nationalism. It's gone too far in one direction. It stifles business. It really hurts businesses. It puts people out of work and so on and so forth, all under the guise of, or not all, but much of it under the guise of protecting the environment.
Do you think maybe at the root of it is really a power grab of big government in terms of using regulation to basically control the economy?
Yeah, not only that, but it's a big money grab too. It's a big money grab.
Well, I appreciate the call. Great caller, and it's a very interesting time, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. 860-685-7700. 860-685-7700. Chris, as I analyze our discussion, it seems like both sides are dug in. And I think on the Democratic side, no matter what happens, it's not going to be right. Am I inaccurate in that?
No, I think you're right. I think the difference, though, if you're scoring it like a game, is that Donald Trump is on offense and he's winning more than he's losing. And the Democrats, and I'll put the media in the Democrats' camp, their opposition is ineffective and will be increasingly ineffective.
I think just a comment for a second.
Yeah.
I think it's actually less than ineffective. I think it's detrimental.
Yeah.
I think when you see getting upset about something that's not really even, Chuck Schumer, fake outrage, like fake media, I think is a definite negative. It's like people thinking, what are you upset about? I mean, save your gunpowder to something that really makes a difference, correct?
And the fact that those are the people who are doing the fake outrage is even more of an outrage. So if we had new leadership and we were still trying to put a good face on, the fight, then, we would show that there was a trend in the party and it wasn't just a recycling.
I think Marty's point is excellent. I think the Democratic leadership is probably one of the most detrimental aspects to the entire party. What do you think about that, Chris?
Oh, yeah, detrimental, and they're ineffective. And listen, I am not a registered Democrat. I generally don't agree with most Democrat positions. That's true. But if you look at the leaders, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and that group, they have presided over the decimation of the Democratic Party. And if you're a Democrat and you want the Democratic Party to do well because you like the way that they want to govern and how they lead this country, then you ought to have leaders that are effective and could win elections. And the current group of leaders have failed miserably for a while now.
Well, I want to play, to that point in terms of the leadership of the Democratic Party. One of my favorite people is, to kind of reiterate what Marty was saying. Let's hear from one of their great leaders, Ms. Pelosi.
Said yesterday we did not have the majority, but we have the gavel. Excuse me. We don't have the gavel. We don't have the...
Do you know that if you Google things, like you say, Google Keith Richards, you would say, is he still on drugs? Or, was Liberace gay?
Nancy Pelosi.
If you go Nancy Pelosi, it will basically prompt you, is she insane?
That's the top Google.
That is absolutely, yes. Nancy Pelosi, is she either senile or insane? I forgot which one it is. So I think actually Marty has a very good point on that, and time is kind of slipping by. So I invite our callers to dial in at 860-685-7700, 685-7700. Are you scared about Trump, the Trump presidency? Are you concerned that Steve Bannon seems to be a very much in control? Or do you think it's much ado about nothing? And maybe Chris is correct that 2-3 years from now, people are going to say, wow, okay, there was some dust, but after the dust settled, look at where we are. We are balanced budget, or, whatever happens. I mean, that's an interesting point. So we don't have too much time left, so I'll invite you to dial in at 860-685-7700, 685-7700. Marty, 2.5 years from now, what do you think the verdict is going to be?
I think the verdict is going to be dismay.
Okay.
That's dismay. I'm going to go to dismay.
Dismay. Now, Chris, dismay, and also the comment on one other thing that Marty has said, that do you believe that environmental issues are exact science, and anything that would go against it is fake science?
No, I think there's a debate about a lot of this stuff, and it would be better for the country as a whole if it was a scientific debate as opposed to a political one. But
and stop putting fake and real in front of everything. You can't have a debate when you say that's fake. I mean, when you do chemical testing, now you say, no, it's a fake test tube. I mean, after a while, it gets a little bit ridiculous.
Well, the whole premise is how, for instance, I believe that there is global warming, but the point is, how much of it, to certain various degrees, do you shut down an entire economy due to something that is basically been said that is exact and proven science? And I haven't seen contrarian debates. Have you, Chris?
No.
Have you ever seen an expert on George Stephanopoulos, who's on the other side of global warming, on that show?
No.
Okay, there you go. So let's talk about news issues, Marty.
Well, I wanted to keep it a little lighthearted today because we have such a beautiful spring day here at the end of February. But I'm sure you've noticed, gentlemen, that in the world of business,
at least every Sunday,
that Playboy
I pray for the Democrats and
is bringing back the nudes.
Well, okay. First of all, I think Playboy. You know how bad it's been, Chris.
Marketing,
that
baby.
like 20 years ago. Okay, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I basically got something in the mail. Guess what? I got Playboy. Do you know how much my subscription was?
$12.
$10.
Yeah.
So it was a relevant 20. I mean, come on, really. I got it in the mail. You thumb through it in like 5 seconds.
Read the article.
No, I didn't read any articles. But look through pictures for like 2 seconds. Throw it in the garbage. Now, well before your time, but let's say in the 70s. Playboy was really actually relevant beyond the news. I mean,
sure.
It was like
a
top writers, cutting edge. Talk about defunct. I mean, I don't get nudes or no nudes. I mean, I also believe that their average readership, the age. I think 55?
Oh, I bet 65. It's even older than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not exactly happening.
It was of a time frame.
And what is it, Hef? I mean, is he like in like a life support system?
No, he's still in the Playboy Mansion.
Well, I know he is, but he's on life support system.
I thought he didn't die?
No.
Well, that's how irrelevant they are.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that.
Sorry, Hugh. I'm glad you didn't die.
Okay, so let's go into one more news.
All right. We just recently lost the inventor of the MRI. That's such an insignificant piece of medical equipment now. Dr. Peter Mansfield, who just recently passed at the age of 83.
I did not know that.
Got the Nobel Prize.
Beautiful.
For getting that one.
And do you have some buzzwords?
I do. How about tornadoes?
You know what? They seem very scary, but living in the Northeast, I don't know. It's just something not to sound ignorant, but it's something you see on TV, but I don't really know.
Yeah, well, we're starting to see more of them now.
Just real quick, we got a caller that promises that he can make a real quick comment. Can you?
Hi.
Yes, real quick. What is it?
Yeah, sure. Actually, the people who are supporting Trump, I feel that somehow being disruptive is good, but need not be the case. Like digitalization is disruptive in the IT industry. Well, it is good, but in terms of whether the Donald Trump's policies may be disruptive, but is it going to be good, turning good or not? Well, to my knowledge, I think might not be the case, but we'll see what is happening.
I like that. You're very concise. You delivered what you promised. Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you, caller.
Take care. So let's get into buzzwords, Mr. Keena.
Family farms.
I guess they're probably growing, Chris. What do you think? Oh, didn't know.
I think they're probably shrinking.
The
I
whole
mean,
thing is plummeting, and the problem with that is that only 1% of the people are feeding 99, and we're
That's right.
losing our family farms.
There you go.
But with that said, America farms are the most efficient farms in the entire world, and we could probably feed the entire world if we had to.
Well, we could if we wasn't using GMOs and then our exports weren't being
Well,
accepted.
yeah, I mean, you might have a 17-pound tomato, but we could feed the world.
There you go. Go ahead.
Lizard tails. This is probably the one that's caught my eye the most this week. Lizard tails.
I'm at a loss.
This is the
I'm
slang,
at a loss, too.
This is the slang term given to the two women who had been arrested for assassinating the stepbrother.
Oh.
And
Now
because
that was
wild.
Was
they
that
were
out of
disposable.
control? With the poison, that was nuts. Okay, two more real quick.
Collusion.
It happens all the time. Go ahead.
All
Next
right,
one.
Trappist 1. That was the suggestion of the 7 planets. Have you seen the pictures?
Yeah,
of
I think
this?
it's fake news because how do you know if something has? I'm into astronomy. Believe me, there's no way to know if it's all like hype. Oh yeah, there's a planet and and they're reading
There you go,
Playboy.
man, I know
By the
that.
way, they're all reading Playboy. Anyway, thank you very much.